1961, Oregon, Portland. A mysterious man buys a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington, with cash. He went by the name
Dan Cooper?
Moments before the plane takes off, Dan is intensely focused on his briefcase. That's when...
Sir? We're about to take off. Could I get you anything?
Bourbon soda, thank you. She hands him a bourbon soda in a glass with ice, then leaves. Cooper checks his watch. It's just after 3 p.m. Then, he grabs her arm. She looks back. He releases his grip and reveals a note in his palm. She takes it from him, blushes a little, smiles and tucks it away in her pocket. Then she begins to walk away again. Miss, you'd better take a look at that note. Write down what I'm saying and bring it to the pilot. I want $200,000 by 5 p.m. in $20 bills. Put it in a knapsack. I want 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. When we land, I want a fuel truck ready to refuel. No funny stuff, or I'll do the job. Bruh, this girl thought he was trying to flirt, but he was like, nah, I'm trying to hijack this plane. Give me my money. But wait, if they land in Seattle, wouldn't the cops just cuff him? Cooper was already 2 steps ahead. After Flight 305 lands, the passengers all get off normally. Nobody knows what's happening, but then... Attention Flight 305, you are not authorized for takeoff. I repeat, attention Flight 305. Cooper kept the captain and stewardess hostage and orders them to take him to Mexico City. That's where he would make his escape. No higher than 10,000 feet. The captain doesn't have any choice. He has to comply. But it seems like there's one major flaw in Cooper's plan. Cooper stated the destination, but didn't specify the route. So the captain took the long way, buying him just enough time to send a secret message.
Flight 305 has been compromised.
Once they arrived in Mexico City, it was game over for Cooper. This would have worked, except Cooper never had any intention of going to Mexico City. I need to use the bathroom. If anybody moves, I'll crash this plane. Several minutes go by, but it feels like hours that he's been gone. The captain and stewardess don't even think about escaping. After all, there's really nowhere to escape to. But then, the stewardess notices.
He took the parachutes!
Suddenly, the captain and stewardess both realize what's happening. The stewardess and captain run down the aisle looking for DB Cooper. They split up. The stewardess notices something suspicious. A JCPenney clip-on tie right by the rear doors of the plane. She picks it up and then... wind starts blasting out right into her face as she struggles to keep the door from flying open. She barely opens her eyes and sees... just like that, Cooper was gone with the money. My guy jumped? I guess it makes sense why you asked for the parachutes, but still. My guy jumped? Where'd he go? Who was he? What happens next? I have so many questions. The FBI does too. After that, they were able to create a DNA sample from the tie Cooper left behind, and so the infamous Norjack was launched, aka the case to find DB Cooper. They even released the serial numbers of the stolen $20 bills in case the money was spent anywhere. Fun fact, the media got his name wrong, which is why we know him as DB Cooper instead of Dan Cooper today. In the past 5 years, we've received thousands of anonymous tips, investigated over 800 suspects, and even arrested imposters trying to gain clout. Yet we've come no closer to finding DB Cooper than the day we started. We've brought you here today because we need to find this man, and I'm told that each one of you has a strong case that I should pay attention to. If I may. Our first suspect, William Floyd McCoy. Also in 1972, 5 months after the DB Cooper heist, a man who goes by the name James Johnson boards United Airlines flight number 855 during a stopover in Denver, Colorado. It's important to note that the plane was also a Boeing 727, the same type from the DB Cooper case, and the connections don't just stop there. McCoy also gave written instructions to a flight attendant demanding a ransom, this time for $500,000. Then, he also jumped out with a parachute. What are we waiting for? Let's bring him in. There's just one problem. He's dead. What? Unlike DB Cooper, we know where McCoy landed thanks to a tip from a nearby motorist. He was just stopping by for some fast food when he picked up a hitchhiker. It was pretty weird that the guy was wearing a jumpsuit and had a duffel bag. So he calls the police. When Bernie shows up at the scene to arrest him, he looks inside the bag and finds $499,970. Problem is, McCoy wasn't really interested in going away for 45 years, so he tried to pull a fast one and, let's just say, it didn't end well for him. Doesn't matter, he's not our guy. What do you mean? DB Cooper never wore a jumpsuit. He's not our guy. Who's next?
I'll tell you who DB Cooper is. He's my husband, that's who!
That's Joe Weber talking about her husband, Dwayne Weber, our second suspect. He'd been fighting with a rare kidney disease and his time was running out. Joe was by his side, trying to comfort him, when he whispered into her ear, "I am Dan Cooper." At first, Joe was confused, but then she started to remember strange little things about her husband's recent behavior. On the night of the DB Cooper heist, Joe remembers her husband coming home with a serious knee injury.
What happened?
I jumped out of a plane. She thought he was joking, like most wives would. But then his strange behavior continued. He would have nightmares in the middle of the night, muttering something like, "Fingerprints, plane, fingerprints, I left the fingerprints." So Joe started to investigate. When she learned about the DB Cooper case, she looked through Dwayne's things. That's when she found a one-way ticket to Northwest Airlines. He does roughly match our description, and I do believe your story has some credibility, but he's not our guy.
How can you say that?
There's no evidence he knew anything about the airline business, or had the specific set of skills required to pull off this heist. Sorry, Joe. Larry, you got anything? Isn't it obvious? DB Cooper is dead. Can you elaborate? The FBI had assumed DB Cooper was an experienced paratrooper, but according to Larry, this was not the case. After he demanded 4 parachutes, he took the 2 that were not fully functional. One was a training chute which couldn't open at all, and the other was a military chute which isn't steerable. On top of that, he jumped in the middle of the night with no visibility during a storm into a wooded area. Nobody could have survived that. I agree that it's unlikely anybody could have survived the jump. But since neither DB Cooper's body or parachute were recovered, we have to assume he's still out there. I thank you 3 for coming, but for now, this case will remain open. Over the years, the FBI continued their investigation, but ultimately made less progress than a little boy building a campfire with his dad one morning at the beach.